The Eclipse Games came only once every 20 years. To most people, they were not merely a tournament, they were an era. A generation could be born, grow, and reach adulthood between one eclipse and the next. Children who watched the opening ceremony with wide eyes would become soldiers, nobles, workers, rebels, parents, and dreamers before the next games ever returned. Entire houses rose during the wait. Others collapsed quietly into dust. Alliances formed, bloodlines ended, empires shifted their borders. But when the eclipse came back, everything stopped. For 4 years, the galaxy watched. 400 contestants would enter. 400 names chosen from across the stars. Nobles, mercenaries, warriors, assassins, scholars, survivors, champions from proud houses and desperate fighters with nothing but skill and hunger. Some entered for glory. Some entered for money. Some entered to escape poverty. Some entered to build a house of their own. And some entered because the eclipse had a way of calling to the kind of people who were never meant to live quietly. Only a handful would survive long enough to matter. Fewer still would become legends. The prize was always enormous, a fortune beyond ordinary imagination. Land rights, trade privileges, titles, a chance to claim territory and establish a dynasty. For many, it was the only path from being forgotten to becoming immortal. But the 12th eclipse was different. The 12th eclipse carried a prize pool greater than any in history. 20 years ago, during the previous eclipse, Lord Rain had won. For a brief moment, he had stood as champion before the galaxy. Then, during the award ceremony, he had tried to kill the king. The act shattered the celebration and stained the title of champion itself. Lord Rain was stripped of his rights, his winnings, his claim, and his honor. The champion's prize of the 11th eclipse was seized, sealed, and left untouched for 2 decades. Now it had been added to the prize of the 12th. 2 eclipse prizes, 1 games, 400 contestants. 4 years. The galaxy was not simply excited, it was starving. Every house wanted the prize, every ambitious bloodline wanted the title, every broken world with hungry children whispered prayers over the names of its chosen contestants. And on reach, beneath the banners of one of the most respected dynasties in existence, 3 women were currently trying very hard to beat each other senseless. A blade rang against a staff. Boots slammed onto polished training floors. A body vaulted over a moving barrier. Aurora reached twisted mid-air, barely avoiding the padded strike that would have clipped her ribs. "Too slow," she shouted. Plum spun the staff back into both hands and smirked. "You say that every time you almost get hit." Almost is the part that matters. Ellie Dawnfall dropped from the climbing frame above them and landed in a crouch behind Aurora. "Your father says that exact same thing," Aurora groaned before even turning around. "Can we go 1 training session without comparing me to Dad?" "No," Plum said. "Absolutely not," Ellie added. Aurora spun, bringing her practice blade up just in time to block Ellie's strike. The impact rattled through her arms, but she held firm, boots sliding half an inch across the mat. The academy gym was enormous. It had been built into one of Reach's upper citadels, a place where glass walls looked out over the shining city below and the distant ship lanes above. Inside, the room shifted like a machine designed by someone with a personal hatred for lazy students. Rotating walls, rising pillars, suspended platforms, balance beams, drone targets, gravity plates, moving cover, climbing nets, artificial terrain fields that could mimic forest, desert, rubble, ice, or open urban combat. Aurora, Ellie, and Plum had trained in that room since they were girls. Back then, their weapons had been foam. Their armor had been too big. Their plans had been ridiculous. They would win the Eclipse Games, claim a planet, build a house, and give it the most terrifying name 3 little girls could imagine. Aurora smiled at the memory. Then Plum swept her legs out from under her. Aurora hit the mat hard. "Oof!" Ellie pointed her blade down at Aurora's chest. "Dead." Aurora stared up at both of them. "That was rude." "That was teamwork," Plum said. "That was bullying, also teamwork." Aurora laughed despite herself, then kicked upward. Ellie hopped back. Plum stepped in too late. Aurora rolled, grabbed the edge of a low obstacle, and used it to swing herself back onto her feet. She was 24 years old enough to make her own choices, young enough for half the galaxy to think she had no right making this one. The youngest contestant who would ever enter the Eclipse Games. That sentence had followed her for months. In news broadcasts, in academy whispers, in political arguments, in Celine's worried silences. Aurora attacked first this time. Her blade flashed toward Ellie, then feinted low toward Plum. Ellie caught the trick immediately and shoved Aurora sideways with her shoulder. Plum's staff came around again, forcing Aurora to duck under it. 3 days, Ellie said between strikes. Aurora blocked. Don't say it like that. 3 days until we leave for Nero Vega. Plum pressed forward. 3 days until registration. 4 years after that, Ellie added. Aurora grinned. If we survive. When we survive, Plum corrected. Aurora liked that better. The three of them broke apart, circling each other across the training mat. Nero Vega, the city of the Eclipse. A world-sized furnace of wealth, politics, violence, celebration, and spectacle. Every 20 years it became the center of the galaxy. Contestants arrived through its gates as names, some left as corpses, some left as legends. Aurora had dreamed of it since childhood, not because of the prize, not only because of the glory, because the Eclipse Games were the one place in the galaxy where a person could become more than the shadow they were born beneath. And Aurora had been born beneath the largest shadow of all, Kenny Reach, war hero, house founder, peacebringer. The man who ended the war with House Rain and changed the galaxy forever. To the stars, he was a legend. To Aurora, he was the man who ate toast over the sink and pretended nobody noticed. Ellie lunged, Aurora parried. Plum came in from the side. Aurora backstepped onto a moving platform and rode it upward, laughing as the other two cursed below. Unfair advantage. It's part of the room. You always run upward when you're losing. That is called tactical height. Plum threw her staff like a spear. Aurora's eyes widened. Hey! The staff struck the platform controls. The machinery jolted. Aurora lost balance and tipped backward, arms windmilling. For one ridiculous second, she was no longer the daughter of Kenny Reach, no longer the youngest Eclipse contestant in history, no longer a future symbol of Reach. She was just Aurora, falling off a training platform while her two best friends laughed like idiots. She landed in a crash mat with a dramatic groan. Ellie leaned over the edge, dead again. Aurora raised one finger. I hate both of you. Plum retrieved her staff. No, you don't. Aurora sat up, hair a mess, pride slightly dented. No, I don't. The three of them eventually collapsed together against one of the low padded walls, breathing hard, sweat shining on their skin. For a while, none of them spoke. The room hummed around them, obstacles reset. Drone targets returned to their charging ports. The artificial terrain field shimmered and faded back into polished flooring. Ellie stared up at the ceiling. We're really doing it. Plum's expression softened. Yeah. Aurora looked at them both. Ellie Dawnfall, heir to one of the galaxy's newest houses. Plum, who had survived a past that would have broken most people and somehow grown gentler without becoming weak. Her sisters in everything but blood. Aurora nudged Ellie with her shoulder. Still want to enter together? Ellie looked offended. Obviously. Aurora glanced at Plum. You? Plum smiled. Since we were kids. Aurora's grin turned wicked. Pre-made faction from the start? Ellie nodded. From the start. Plum's smile sharpened. No splitting. No waiting to see who else is there. No noble alliances, no political nonsense. Aurora held out her hand. The other two placed theirs over it. A promise older than their adult faces passed silently between them. They had made it as children. They were keeping it as women. Together, Aurora said. Together, Ellie replied. Together, Plum finished. None of them said the faction name. Not yet. That part was still too funny to waste in an empty training room. Later, when the sun had begun to melt behind the towers of Reach, the three women walked back through the city toward Aurora's home. Reach had changed in 20 years. It had grown brighter, taller, safer. The scars of war had not vanished, but they had become part of the architecture. Memorial gardens bloomed where bunkers once stood. Old defensive walls had been carved with the names of the dead. Children ran beneath statues of people who had once bled to make that laughter possible. Aurora loved it, and sometimes she felt trapped by it. Every street remembered her father. Every banner carried the Reach crest. Every old soldier who saw her smiled with pride she had not earned. She wanted to earn something, even if it meant walking into the most dangerous competition in the galaxy. The door to her home opened before she touched it. Kenny Reach stood inside, older now, but not diminished. Time had silvered parts of his hair and carved lines around his eyes, yet he still carried himself with the loose confidence of a man who had survived things history books struggled to explain. Beside him stood Celine, graceful, sharp-eyed, and beautiful in a way that made rooms behave themselves. "There they are," Kenny said. Aurora smiled despite herself. "Dad." Celine opened her arms, and the three women were swallowed into the warmth of home. Ellie hugged Celine first, then Kenny. Plum came next, and Celine held her a little longer, the way she often did. Plum never asked why. She never needed to. Kenny looked at Ellie. "How's your father doing back home?" Ellie smiled. "Good. Busy. House Dawnfall has been preparing delegations for Nero Vega. Tell him I said he still owes me a drink." Ellie laughed. "He says you owe him 3. History is written by liars." Celine gave Kenny a look. "History is written by people with better memory than you." Aurora grinned. "She's got you there." Kenny placed a hand over his heart. "Betrayed in my own bloodline." For a few precious minutes, everything felt easy. They ate, laughed, and talked around the kitchen bench while the city lights flickered on outside. Kenny asked about training. Ellie exaggerated Aurora's fall from the platform. Plum gave a brutally accurate reenactment. Aurora denied everything and failed. Then Celine's smile faded slightly. Aurora noticed immediately. So did Kenny. Celine glanced toward Ellie and Plum. "Girls, could we have a moment alone with Aurora?" The warmth shifted. Ellie straightened first. "Of course." Plum nodded. "We'll be on the balcony." Aurora watched them go. The glass doors closed softly behind them. Now it was only the 3 of them. Mother, father, daughter. Celine turned back slowly. Aurora exhaled. "Please don't." Celine's brows lifted. "I haven't said anything. You have the face." "What face?" "The mum face." Kenny muttered. "It is a very specific face." Celine pointed at him without looking. "Do not help." Kenny wisely stopped speaking. Celine stepped closer to Aurora. "You're too young." Aurora's jaw tightened. "There it is. You are 24. I'm an adult. You are the youngest contestant in Eclipse history." "I know. Do you?" Celine asked, voice sharpening. "Do you really understand what that means? 400 contestants, Aurora. 4 years. This is not an academy trial. This is not a sparring match with Ellie and Plum. This is not a story your father tells at dinner with the ugly parts left out." Aurora flinched at that, but did not look away. Celine's voice softened, which somehow hurt more. "You are important." Aurora laughed once, bitter and small. "That's the problem." Celine froze. Aurora swallowed. "I'm always important. Important to Reach, important to history, important because I'm Kenny Reach's daughter. Important because of what my blood means. Important because everyone has already decided what I should become." Kenny watched quietly. Aurora's eyes shone, but she refused to let tears fall. "I don't want to be protected until I'm harmless." Celine's face changed. Aurora continued. "I know you're scared. I know the games are dangerous. I know people will come after me because of Dad. I know some of them will want to hurt Reach through me." "Then why go?" Celine asked. Aurora looked toward the balcony where Ellie and Plum waited beyond the glass. "Because they're going." Then she looked back. "Because we made a promise." Her voice steadied. "And because I need to know who I am when the galaxy isn't just handing me a name." Celine turned to Kenny. "Kenny." Aurora braced herself. Celine's voice carried warning. "Tell her." Kenny rubbed his jaw. The way he did when stepping into danger he knew he could not shoot. "She has a point." Celine stared at him. Aurora blinked, then slowly smiled. Kenny held up both hands. "I don't like it." Celine's eyes widened. "Kenny, I hate it, actually. I hate the idea of her walking through those gates. I hate knowing what people might try. I hate that I can't go in there and stand between her and every blade, bullet, poison, beast, betrayal, and smug little noble with too much perfume." Aurora snorted despite herself. Kenny looked at her. "But I understand it." The room went still. "She wants to grow her own shadow," he said quietly, "not live inside mine." Aurora's smile faded into something softer. Kenny stepped closer. "I spent half my life trying to become someone worth remembering. I don't get to turn around now and tell my daughter she's not allowed to try." Celine looked wounded, angry, terrified, and proud all at once. She could die. Kenny's voice lowered. "I know." Those 2 words carried too much history. For a moment, the ghosts of the old war seemed to stand in the room with them. Then Aurora moved forward and hugged her mother. Celine resisted for half a breath, then she folded around her daughter completely. "You are impossible," Celine whispered. Aurora smiled into her shoulder, probably from Dad's side. Celine pulled back and glared through wet eyes. "Oh, absolutely." Kenny grinned. Celine pointed between them. This is what happens every time. I try to be the reasonable parent, and then the two of you form some ridiculous daddy-daughter rebellion. Aurora laughed. Kenny nodded solemnly. Our faction name is better. Celine nearly smiled. Aurora gasped. Don't tempt us. Celine shook her head, but the tension had cracked, not vanished, cracked. Enough for love to breathe through it. Finally, Celine placed both hands on Aurora's face. If you go, you do not throw your life away for pride. I won't. You do not chase glory over sense. I won't. You listen to Ellie. You listen to Plum. You listen to your instincts. And if something feels wrong, you survive first and explain later. Aurora nodded. I promise. Celine kissed her forehead. Then you have my blessing. Aurora closed her eyes. For the first time in months, the weight on her chest shifted. Not gone, but easier to carry. The next day passed in a blur, then another. And then the morning came. Nero Vega rose beneath them like a jewel built around a wound in the universe. The city of the Eclipse. Towers spiraled into the sky. Arena shields shimmered above whole districts. Ships crowded the atmosphere in glittering streams. Banners from hundreds of houses snapped in the wind. Broadcast drones hovered like silver insects. Crowds filled bridges, platforms, streets, balconies, rooftops, and every open space big enough to hold a body. Aurora stood in line with Ellie and Plum before the official registration gates. Ahead of them, the entrance to the 12th Eclipse Games towered like the mouth of a god. 400 contestants would enter. 4 years would decide what they became. Aurora flexed her fingers. Ellie noticed. Nervous? Aurora glanced at her. No. Plum smiled. Liar. Aurora exhaled, terrified. Ellie reached for her hand. Plum took the other. Aurora squeezed both. The line moved slowly. Contestants stood ahead and behind them. Some wore armor polished bright enough to blind. Others wore old coats, military gear, ceremonial robes, street leathers, house colors, or nothing that gave away who they were at all. Aurora looked over them carefully. Future enemies, future allies, future corpses, future legends. Then her gaze stopped. Several places ahead stood an older man, tall, broad across the shoulders, still, not stiff, still in the way a blade was still before it moved. Aurora could only see him from behind. Grey touched his hair. A dark coat hung from his frame. There was nothing remarkable enough to explain the sudden chill crawling up her spine. And yet, she knew him, or she felt like she should. The shape of him tugged at something buried, not memory, something older than memory. A story half heard through a door, a portrait glimpsed once and forgotten, a nightmare someone else had described so many times it had somehow become part of her own bones. Ellie leaned closer. Aurora. Aurora did not answer. The man did not turn. Plum followed her stare. What is it? Aurora swallowed. I don't know. The registration gates opened ahead with a sound like thunder. The crowd roared. The line began to move. The older man stepped forward, still without showing his face. Aurora reached, stared at the back of his head and felt the first crack of fear beneath all her excitement. Not because he looked dangerous, but because somewhere deep inside her, beneath 24 years of peace, family, training, stories and dreams, something whispered that she already knew him.